For the Birds is an abstract family strategy game for 2 to 6 players that takes 20 to 30 minutes to play. You're going to be trying to get 4 of your birds in a straight line, either vertical, horizontal, or in a square. On your turn, you'll be rolling the dice and then possibly placing one of your birds on any of the combinations of the 2 numbers that are there. Or instead, you'll be playing one of these 6 cards that gives you a special ability that allows you to break the rules of the game. But watch out, because people can roll hawks or crows, which force people to get moved and displaced off of different places on the board. And some birds have pecking order over other birds that allow them to push them out of ways. Can you mix the luck of the dice with your strategy and your cards and these special birds to get 4 in a row or 4 in a square? To set up, first place the board in the middle of the table so everyone can reach it. If you're playing with 4 to 6 players, you'll be using the entire board. If you're playing with 2 or 3 players, you'll be using a 7x7 grid that is colored a little bit differently around the board. You won't be using the entire outer ring grid of the board. Also, if you're playing with 4 to 6 players, you'll use the 2 D10s. That's the black die and the brown die that have 10 sides on them. If you're playing with 2 or 3 players, you'll use a black die and a brown die that is the 8-sided die. Whatever the amount of players you're playing with, take the 2 dice that you're not using and place them back in the box. You won't need them. Each player will pick which color or bird that they'll be throughout the game. They will pick up those 6 cards of that color. In this case, I'm red, so I'm also the Cardinals, and everyone will take their cards in front of them. Any cards or colors that aren't used in the game will be put back in the box. You don't need them. And in addition to taking the cards of the bird and color that you want to be, you'll also take the 6 birds of that color. So I was the Cardinals, so in this case, I'll take all 6 of the birds. You'll take those 6 birds and just place them in front of you. There's also 2 non-player birds called the hawk on the left and the crow on the right. These are going to get placed at the beginning of the game as well. The hawk is the bigger brown one and the crow is the smaller black one. You'll decide who the start player is any way you see fit or randomly. Then that start player is going to take the hawk, the brown hawk, and place it on any one of the red dots in the tree. They will then take the 2 crows and place them on any numbered place on the tree that is not adjacent to the hawk that was just placed. Or you could decide to roll the 2 dice that you're using and then place it in one of the 2 spots, either 24 or 42, depending on what you'd like. The object of the game is to get 4 of your birds into one of 2 different types of configurations. The first one is a straight line, and this line could be basically horizontally, vertically, or diagonally, assuming that there's a branch that goes all the way through. The other way to win is to get 4 in a square just like this. Each player will play their turn, and then it will go clockwise to the next player's turn. On your turn, you're doing 2 things. You're going to be rolling the 2 dice, and then you're going to decide to place a bird or play a card. So let's say on my turn, I rolled the dice. I have a 6 and a 5. I can place one of my birds from my reserve to either 65, which is here, or the other way, 56, assuming that, in this case, let's just assume it's empty. So let's say I go into 56. That essentially would be my turn, and I would take these dice, pass it to the next player. It'd be the next player's turn. Now on a subsequent turn, after rolling, if you did not want to place one of your birds, you could play one of these cards that are in your hand. Remember, these are the 6 cards you got at the beginning of the game. Each one of them has a special ability that we will go over later, but if you don't want to place a bird, you can always play one of these, and these are held secretly in your hand until you use them. What happens if you want to place a bird where there already is one? For example, I rolled a 46. I could, if I want, place a bird on a 46 or a 64 as mentioned earlier. But let's say I already have one of my birds on the 46. Well, pecking order is going to come into play. What that means is you always have pecking order over your own birds. So if I'm the red player and I want to go into 46 where I already have one, I can place this bird here, and this bird will then slide to any adjacent spot that's open in this case, or to any adjacent spot where it has pecking order. So let's say it was empty, it would slide this bird down here, and I would be able to put one there. Now you do have pecking order over one other bird each game. The player sitting directly to your left, you have pecking order over. So let's say the purple player was sitting to my left and I rolled the 46. I have pecking order over purple. I could then go here and then the purple player would decide where this bird went by following the lines and making sure it can go to an empty space, or if it's not empty, if it has pecking order over that bird, it will just continue to slide birds in that way. So let's take this example again. Red rolled a 46, and they push off this orange bird off the 46 because let's say red has pecking order over it. Now let's say the orange player is sitting just to the right of the purple player, which means the purple player is sitting to the left of the orange player, and so orange has pecking order over purple. The orange player can decide once it gets knocked off by the red player which direction to go. But let's say it could go in any of these empty spots, but since it has pecking order over purple, it could knock purple off, and then purple could decide where to go in any empty spot or into a spot that it has pecking order over. So it just flows like that through a chain reaction. Now let's say I rolled the dice and I did not want to place my bird in either 82 or 28, for example. Now these cards will all be in my hand, secret from the other players, but I put them here so you could see them. Let's say you play one of these. That's all you can play. And let's say I played flock. You can move 2 of your birds one space each, and it's taking in effect the normal moving rules that I had already talked about. You could shoo, which is remove a hawk or a crow from the tree. Essentially, you would remove it off the board and you would place it off the board so it could come in later. Peck, you can move an opponent's bird 1 or 2 spaces. So if I was the orange player, I could move this purple bird, let's say 1 space, or if I want to move it 2 spaces, it actually flies over the first space. So I could use this to maybe block the red player coming down here. You could do a swoop, which is move one of your birds 1 or 2 spaces. And just like the peck, if it's moving 2, it could fly over the first space. You could do mock, which is place or move a crow to any space on the tree. So you could take a crow that's on the tree and move it anywhere. But even if there's some crows that haven't been placed yet, you can do that. Or if you prefer, you could take a crow that has not yet been placed and place it as the normal crow placing, as I mentioned earlier. This one allows you to reroll 1 or both dice, and at that point you could still either place your bird or play another card. Essentially, it just gives you another turn. I must say, once you play one of these cards, you discard it. So basically, let's say we played roll, all these cards would still be in my hand. This goes face up in front of me. Now let's say I did that, and this would be discarded. So one of the things that happens is you could possibly roll doubles in this game. When you roll doubles, you get to take the top card off your discard deck back into your hand. So if when playing roll, you re-rolled both dice and you got a doubles, you actually get this card back in your hand as well as being able to take that turn. And when rolling that double of 88, I could put my bird here, assuming I could following the normal placement rules. If I can't, I could always play a card, and we're going to go over some other rules later that tell you what to do when you can't place a bird at all. We'll get to those later. Now when you're rolling your dice, you might roll a hawk and or a crow. In this case, we rolled a 6 and a crow. And notice that the crows are black, and they're the black dice, and the hawks are brown, and it's the brown dice, so it also helps you figure out which one is which. So let's see this. I rolled this. If I want to, I could place this crow on any number that has a 6 anywhere in it. So any of the 60 numbers or any of the numbers that have a 6 in it. I could place it in an empty spot like this, 26, or I could place it in an occupied spot. This is 36. It has a 6 in it. The crow has pecking order over everybody. So this player is purple. This crow could go in here and displace this purple bird, and this bird would have to decide where to go. It could go one of these empty spaces, or as we said earlier, you could follow the pecking rule orders as well. If this bird has nowhere to go, it cannot be displaced anywhere throughout pecking rules and everything around it is full, this bird would just come off the board and it would be placed on it later. But in this case, this is open, so the purple bird went there. Now, if when you roll a crow and you decide you want to move one, but all the crows are on the board, you can take any crow that's already on the board and move it to any of the legal spots, in this case, any spot that has a 3, remembering that the crows displace all birds. Now remember, after rolling dice, you don't have to play something, you could play a card. So even if I rolled a crow, I don't have to put a crow somewhere in 6, I could play a card instead. Let's say somebody rolled a hawk. It doesn't matter what numbers here, they could place, if they want to, a hawk in any of the open red dots on the tree board. Now if they did not want to place a hawk, they could always play a card like normal. But let's say they play a hawk on this red spot here. This hawk scares away all of the adjacent birds that are on there, starting with the player to your left and going clockwise back to you, and always finishing with crows last. So in this case, this yellow player would have to get scattered away, and it can choose. The yellow player chooses where it goes using normal pecking order and empty space, pushing birds out as I mentioned earlier. Now, when this bird gets done last, because it's the crow, you can never be pushed by a hawk into a spot that you can't go to. So for instance, there's already a hawk here. This bird could not fly away to here and then chain react it. If you're getting displaced by a hawk, you must go into a spot that is legal, meaning you're not being pushed away by another hawk, and you're being pushed and using your normal pecking order. The crow always goes last in this case. If all 3 hawks are already on the board, you roll a hawk, and if you'd like to move a hawk, you can simply take any one of the hawks that's on the board and move it to any of the other open red dots on the board. Now when rolling, you can use the hawks to displace your own birds. For example, let's say I rolled 76. I can place him here at 76, but then he's immediately displaced by this hawk, and maybe I move him here to be in a good row with the rest of my red birds to set myself up for a victory. Now if you roll both birds, a crow and a hawk, that is considered double. So first you'll take your top discard like you normally do when you have doubles, then you'll place it back in your hand. Then you could place either one of these birds, and in this case, you could place the crow on any numbered spot in the game, or of course, if you didn't want to do that, you could always play a card. Once you've used up all your cards after your roll, you could place a bird like normal, or you could place one of these tokens. You can place a token in the normal ways, basically in 19 or 91 in this case, and it would basically make that place uninhabitable for the rest of the game. So in this case, I could block this spot. Now in the rare case that you have no cards left and you cannot place a bird or a token, then you simply re-roll. And turns continue to go clockwise until somebody has won the game by getting 4 birds in a straight line, either horizontal, vertical, or diagonal, or getting 4 of them in a square.